Welcome to God Hockey. Today on episode 8, I talked to Kevin Woodley from In Goal magazine. Kevin's one of the most recognizable names in the goaltending fraternity. We talked about becoming a writer, becoming a goalie, and how it led to a life of reviewing gear and hanging out with some of the best goalies and goalie coaches in the world. Please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll let you know when more content is available. Now let's head to the episode with Kevin Woodley from In Goal magazine. All right, welcome back, everyone, to God Hockey episode 8. Today, I've got a great guest on. I've got Kevin Woodley from In Goal magazine. How are you doing, Kevin?
I'm good. I'm really happy to be on. I appreciate you offering me a spot here and making the time work on my schedule. I apologize it's taken me so long to figure it out, but it's really appreciated.
No worries at all. It's great to have you, and we're here now, and that's what's important. I am a big Quentin Tarantino fan, but I usually do like to start at the beginning, so we can start there. You're a Western Canada kid. That's where you started.
Yeah, I mean, I was born, one of those not a lot of people know. I was born in Whitehorse in the Yukon, but didn't live there long, and so grew up around the Lower Mainland, and kind of I went to school at UBC, double major stats and computer science, which about 3 years into that, and calculus and all that. And I had, for those old enough to remember the movie Jerry Maguire, breakthrough. We'll call it a breakthrough. Quit school, traveled to every major league baseball park in the United States one summer, met a guy outside of Wrigley who was a writer, and put two and two together. I'm like, yeah, I had an English minor. I like writing, and you get to follow sports for a living. I'm in. Went to University of Victoria, got a minor in journalism, started covering hockey, and fell in love with the positioning of goaltending. And here we are now talking about goaltending as my day job and getting to do it with guys like yourself who shared that passion. So life's pretty good right now.
Yeah, it's a good club. I was speaking with another sort of fellow member that does things similar to what we do, and he said he basically put it. He said, I have a vast amount of knowledge in a very narrow space, but that's goaltending.
It's a niche, baby.
Yeah. Oh, it most definitely is. So I mean, that's really amazing the way it came together. Then, I mean, it was almost just sort of happenstance that you fell into writing, and then you just kind of took it off from there. What were some of the first things that you did in terms of becoming a writer? Where did you take that off the get-go?
Well, I mean, it started obviously, like I said, by going to school for it. And it's funny, all that time at UBC, which is a pretty big school, and you can get a little bit lost. I mean, I played, I went to res and I played, intramural sports and all that stuff, but never felt like I was a part of the community. And then you get to a smaller school like UVic, and you're in a program where you sort of see a future, and you just get more involved, right? Like I did everything from edit the school newspaper, the university newspaper, first in sports as a sports editor, then as the main editor. I developed a program. We actually managed to get advertising packages and get it funded to travel with the basketball teams. The UVic basketball teams, both men's and women's, were competing at and winning national championships semi-regularly back then. So we would travel with them. I was the play-by-play guy. I would love sports. But it didn't, hockey wasn't, I loved it, but I didn't play it at a high level. I wasn't a goaltender, folks. I didn't grow up in goaltending. I got a job out of university. I actually hadn't even finished my degree. I got a job covering the Vancouver Canucks, in part because nobody else wanted it. The Canucks were a bit of a shambles as a franchise. The sports writer for the Associated Press at the time was leaving Vancouver for Buffalo, which, believe it or not, is a promotion in sports writing worlds because they have the NFL. And so he was looking for a replacement.
In spite of being expansion cousins?
Exactly. He was looking for a replacement. I had met him. I had through a friend, sort of job shadowed again, just meet as many people as you can and build relationships. And turns out that everybody wanted to cover the Grizzlies. They wanted that job that he was leaving behind. Nobody wanted to touch the Vancouver Canucks. I kid you not. That's how I got a job covering the NHL.
So we're mid-90s then.
We're right at the right around 99, 2000 actually.
Okay. So he was already there and was leaving. Okay.
Yeah, all the people that lined up for the Grizzlies gig, it didn't last very long.
Well, looking back.
Yeah, they were gone. And just my first night on the job for the Associated Press, who I worked for 10 years, was the night McSorley whacked Brashear. So that was a fun trial by
fire. Talk about a start.
Started. Yeah, and so that's how I started.
You got your pen and paper. You're ready to ask some questions.
No, not pen and paper.
No.
I had the one thing about deadline writing and I didn't realize this. I had to learn this on the go. Like when that game ends, when you're working for a wire service, you literally have a couple of minutes to file your first story.
Over. AP. That's right.
And then you got to go down to the locker room and get your quotes. And if you take too long to file the game over, then you're late to the locker room. Messier was in town at the time. You did not be late to his scrum because you didn't ask. There were no second questions or, hey, I missed the scrum. Can I ask one? Very intimidating presence. And so you wrote it from the back up. Like, so when the buzzer went, you were ready to hit file, whether it was overtime or no shootouts back then, but now shootouts. So I'm sitting there proud as punch, ready to hit send. My article is written. I'm looking at the clock. It's winding down. All of a sudden, I look down and I'm like, why is Donald Brashear on the ice twitching? So that was trial by fire. The good news, and this, I don't mean to use the phrase, but it made me much more prepared for when Bertuzzi got Steve Moore.
A few years later.
I was just going to say,
Yeah, been there, done that. So anyway.
So you got to cover some pretty heavy topics.
Oh yeah. I'd say one of my big breaks was I covered the trial. That was my first game for the AP. I ended up going over to Sweden for the Canucks training camp that fall. Made some inroads there, met new people, and ended up covering the McSorley trial that fall as well for the Hockey News and for the cover stories on the Hockey News. So, which, I mean, it's not like it's not proud. Like, it
right.
Crappy story, but learn
it's a
how
moment.
to cover other things.
And so I still have that in the, the sort of personal archives, my first cover story. And so I freelanced for everyone back then. The Hockey News, I strung for Sports Illustrated. I don't know if we can say this, but I was a bit of a media whore. I just worked for anyone who wanted to give me a check and
give me the opportunity. Travel.
Yeah, covered a couple Stanley Cup finals for USA Today back then. And along the way, I met a goalie coach named Ian Clark here in Vancouver who was running a magazine called Goalie News. And he asked me if I would write stories and edit some of his teaching. Well, there you go. Now I'm speaking an entirely new language, the language of goaltending. I'm editing teaching tips from one of the great goaltending coaches of our time, frankly, and learning the position through his words. And man, did that change everything for me. It just, back in the early 2000s, nobody talked to goalies in there. Like, journalism was good goal, bad goal. Right? Like, no understanding of what the goalie was actually trying to do. Proper leg recovery was new in the NHL. Like getting up off the wrong leg, a lot of guys still did. But nobody really understood, like what they were trying to do, what they were trying to learn, what they were trying to be taught. And so Ian opened up all those worlds to me, opened up conversations with goaltenders that I think they enjoyed because the questions and the conversations were things that they weren't having with anyone else at the time in that locker room, at least not from a writing standpoint. And I fell in love with the position. I want to say it was my first daughter, so around 2003. I call it my sympathy pregnancy. My wife gained weight with, being pregnant, and I gained 50 pounds not being pregnant, just finishing off all her meals. And so needed to get healthy, get fit. Had this learned all this stuff about goaltending. So I'm like, I need to start playing. And that's when the two worlds came together. Now I was trying to do all these technical things I was reading about and trying to play the position.
And for you, that's the start of goaltending is at that time. That's when you started.
Mid-30s, man.
Yeah, mid-30s, I would say. So I was 33 probably at the time, or 34. And yeah, that's when it started for me. And that's how it, I mean, in a weird way, it's a pretty weird way to get started. I was actually...
How dare you write about goaltending, having never played the position, Kevin?
Well, I play it now, so...
There you go. Yep.
And I play at beer league level, crappy beer league level. I do have a Monday night skate with a bunch of guys who did play pro and who are much better than me. So I play punch above my weight class a little bit there. And I just love it. Whether I'm getting lit or having success, I'm always learning. And that's actually going to be the hard part, I think, Dana, is if there comes a point where I can't, whether it's because of hips or age, I'm almost 50 now. It'll be hard to, still have the passion to do all the writing and all that kind of stuff if I'm not actually able to play it. So I don't look forward to that day, and I'm doing my best to stay in good enough shape to keep playing in the meantime.
I know I always tell guys, well, just never take your foot off the gas. And then, you never have that slow down, and then, you keep your momentum going.
Yeah, and normally I would agree. Thing called the pandemic.
No, tell me about it.
I would say it's been 17 months since I've been on the ice as a goalie. Been out there doing video work of late as things have opened up, sort of filming other high-end goalies. But I mean, I'm a guy who, in order to still play as I've gotten older here, I probably would spend 30 to 40 minutes a day sort of doing mobility work. Maria Mountain, fantastic, trainer that I think all goalies know about. Her programs are amazing. Just trying to keep the hips active and stay healthy. And now it's 17 months and I didn't keep that work up because I wasn't preparing to play, and I am nervous as all can be. So I'm back at it now, but man, like there's a good chance the first time out there I'm gonna need the medic alert bracelet or something. Like I've fallen and I can't get up, and I'm a little nervous.
We'll give you the Goldberg setup. We'll just tie it to the posts and
that. Yeah.
I mean, so there's probably some guys on my beer league team that would tell you that's an improvement on my normal.
Might be. Oh, the appropriate self-loathing goalie humor. You have arrived, Kevin. You have arrived.
I learned one thing from Roberto Luongo's time here in Vancouver and his famous Strombone account, and that is self-deprecation is not a bad thing in this position.
And he is great at it. You don't have to be born in 1979 to be great, but I sure think it helps. He and I share that. So I'm not really sure who's next after him. So I'll just consider myself second best 79 goalie, and
there you go.
We'll just call it there. I think I used to think Jason LaBarbera was a 79, but I think he's 1 year younger. But so
I think Barb's is. We're gonna have to look that.
He's
up,
either an 80 or a 78. I know he's right. I think he was in the same draft, but it was like a weird birthday thing or something. It might have been one of those.
And this is the funny thing is I feel like Barb's is younger, but the weird thing to me is that they're all so much younger than me, and I never felt like that when I was covering them, because when you're in the locker room, like you think of the responsibilities and the weight that they carry and the pressure that they carry, and it's hard to sort of, you know what I mean, the maturity that a lot of them have, especially a guy like Roberto. And I don't know. It was just always weird to think that he was that much younger than me. So now that he's retired, I got a reminder though in a Peloton ride that Roberto happened to be taking part in as well. When I saw him blow by me, tried to keep up and almost needed a defib. My wife was like, "Are you alive down there? Just give me I gotta catch. No, never happened. Never caught him.
Bad hips and all. I wouldn't be trying to catch up to an NHL caliber athlete, regardless of age and stage there. I think it's safe to say that, you probably could have taken it down a notch, and I think everyone probably would have forgiven you for that. So let's move it into the beginnings of In Goal then. You do have a partner, we should mention, Dave Hutchinson.
Yeah, more than a partner. He's the founder. He's the guy that started it all. I'm just riding coattails.
You're just the pretty face.
Yeah, and you talk about yeah, we like to have that joke, face of the franchise. I'm the hair of the franchise, at least. Um, but he's definitely the brains, and he's the guy that started it all. And when you talk about, you know, like just good luck and being in the right place at the right time, whether it's finding journalism, in the bleachers at Wrigley Field, or actually I think in a bar across the street, actually at the same bar across the street where I actually the next night got to share a beer with Ferguson Jenkins. Got an autograph baseball up on the wall from him there, and that was all part of that path to journalism. And then Ian Clark and goaltending. Well, when Ian Clark's magazine ceased to exist, I was still covering the NHL but didn't have any goalie writing. I thought about doing my own thing, but then I found this In Goal magazine and reached out to the guy who had founded it, David Hutchison at the time. We were heading into the 2010 Olympics. It was largely masks and equipment that he was doing at the time. And I'm like, hey, like maybe there's a fit here, like for us to work together. And believe it or not, he's like, yeah, like where are you? Like we kind of like where it was like, I can't remember how it went, but it was where are you? Like, where are you based? I'm based in Vancouver. Where are you? He's like, oh, I'm on Vancouver Island. And I kid you not, I was over on Vancouver Island at my in-laws at the time. Like, again, we met in a coffee shop for the first time. We came halfway. He was up island and I was in Victoria. At a coffee shop at Bear Mountain, which is it's like a mini Whistler now, but it's a 36-hole Jack Nicklaus sort of golf complex with a hotel. And it was built by former NHLer Len Barry, and one of his key partners in it was Mike Vernon. And so I had actually toured the golf course as it was being built in a 4x4 with those two guys for a golf magazine I was writing for. Again, everything coming together, like the goalie and Mike Vernon, because I used to freelance golf stories in the summer too. We meet at a coffee shop at Bear Mountain, and I kid you not, the coffee shop was owned by Trevor Kidd.
Awesome.
I'm not joking.
I love that guy.
I mean, it all came together right there.
Like Trevor Kidd's coffee shop in Bear Mountain, two guys, like we could have been from anywhere in the world. Like In Goal now is like we have subscribers internationally, like all over the place. And it's two Canadian guys who just happen to live a ferry ride across. Like it just, everything has come together beautifully. It took us a little while to find our wheels and find what In Goal was going to be. Frankly, it took us 9 years, but we're there now, and it's been a great partnership. And like I said, he's the founder, he's the inspiration, and he's the brains behind making it work.
Right? Yeah, that's it's funny the way, like you're saying, like the way it all comes together, and you just happen to be, right place one time, and it's determinism. Or is it fate, or is it is it something you did along the way? Did you chart your own course, knowingly, unknowingly? But we all arrive somewhere, and it's funny the ways we do it, especially when you look at taking hockey or sports in general. And sure, you're not hitting a ball or kicking something or shooting or whatever. You're writing, but you're a part of it, and whether that brings you to one part or another of your life, there you end up, and the acorn falls off the tree and hits you on the head, and the next thing you know how many years have gone by.
You're a goalie.
Exactly. Well, hey, yeah. You just got to keep it in front of you. Just keep it in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. Believe me, more than acorns have fallen on my head while playing the position, but I think that's perfect preparation.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And so now, I'm at some point we're living now in a digital media world. And you were operating in a print media world. And how do you come to the realization that we need to make sure we're not going to be behind the curve on, where people aren't picking up and thumbing through their magazines and their readables? People are now accessing online. How did you get to the point where that became such a big focus for In Goal?
I think, I'd love to say that it was purposeful and well thought out and ahead of the curve. But the truth is we kind of chased, I would say in the early years, a little bit of that format. We were never going to go to print. Just never were, because the costs are just too much. And I had been in the industry as a freelancer, and I saw where it was headed. Like, I knew print was a non-starter, because I didn't feel like losing money, frankly. Also, this is a niche industry. It's a pretty small, and your operating costs to generate a print publication, that's there's only so many players on the advertising side, and you need them to play at a level. If you're going to rely on them to survive, and especially on a print thing, you need to have them all playing at a significant level. Some of them don't even want to play. Some of them want to play and then not pay their bills. I won't name specific companies, but we quickly realized that print wasn't there. Then we did start, I don't know if you remember, but there was a point where we had what looked like a print magazine. It was a PDF style version, but we ran it through a company called Blue Toad,
where whether you were
with
on
a real
computer
cover
screen,
and those kind.
Yeah, you literally pushed the button and it turned the page. Like, it was a digital, page turner, or on an iPad you could sort of flip it with your finger. And it's funny, you can't see it in the background because it's opposite of which way I'm facing, but I actually have on my wall on this side some of the covers from that, because they were magazine covers, and so we could print them out. And so, I'd get guys coming through town, and over the years the guys who were on the cover would, throw a John Henry on there, some autographs, and so kept them here sort of in memory of those days. But again, it was free. Mm-hmm. And we were relying on ad revenue. And again, it's a pretty small niche.
Yeah.
In terms of the amount of people that would advertise in that world. Everything was going to, most of them were investing in, social media marketing was just taking off. And we were there with all that, but it just, what we realized, it was great. They were 120 page things, and we had a ton of great feedback on it. But we had a guy, he was a goalie himself, who was doing the design and the layout, and he was good. Worked for ESPN, the magazine, Men's Health. He was phenomenal. But the process of that, laying it out there's a lot of work. It would take 3 weeks, because he's working in his spare time for us.
Yeah.
And you're trying to be monthly, and it takes 3 weeks to lay it out. It was hard to keep up. And eventually it became inconsistent. We couldn't deliver it consistently. And eventually it just fell off. And for a while we were just sort of a website. I think what we were missing at the time that we needed to get to where we are now is a subscription product. And I just think that's the new reality, right? Whether it's The Athletic. We had the idea for a while. We had market research that said it was a good idea, and a lot of the people that got our free weekly newsletter on email would subscribe if the content was similar in level to what we were delivering in that page turner.
Yeah.
And so it just took us a little while to get comfortable enough to make that leap. We did about 16 months ago, or I guess, what is it, August? So 20 months ago now, a couple Decembers ago, and decided to go subscription. And basically, if you want to, we're just trying to take you inside an NHL room. If you want to do a video breakdown with an NHL goalie and see what it looks like, we're the only place you can get that. You want to go on the ice with NHL goalies and have them give you tips. You want to have them talk about gear. If you want to see our gear, that's kind of where we went. And then the reality is, I wish our subscribership was higher, but you're still making enough to survive and be a business at a smaller subscribership than you would chasing ads and chasing advertisers. So we still have partnerships with a couple of the companies, but for the most part, it's, we rely on our readers, and I think as long as we keep delivering content they like, they'll keep paying for it. I mean, it's
$5
Yeah.
a month, Canadian. Too.
Yeah, it's more than
Not
reasonable.
we're exorbitant. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think the pro reads,
which is our weekly video breakdown with NHL goalies. I think that service alone is worth $5 a month to subscribe to. So, $50 a year if you do the annual thing. It's not that much. And you're going to get insights and tips from NHL goalies and goalie coaches that, frankly, you just don't get anywhere else.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of useful stuff. There's a lot of just very interesting stuff from front to back when you look at the various different types of segments that you have, whether it be the gear-based stuff, whether it be, like you're saying, with the goalie breakdowns. You have some stuff that's specific just for parents, and then you've got all these other things that go along with it. And it's something that's definitely palatable in terms of what the subscription's going to run you.
Yeah, and we're trying to find, we're trying to find that right balance. We have over 150 professional goalie coaches subscribed, including from all over the world, but including most of the NHL goalie coaches. And so that's like for us, at first we were like, wow, like what a feather in our cap that these guys all want to subscribe. But then you got to start to think too, like, are we missing something that our highest sort of subscription demographic is the guys who are already the best in the business? Are we going too deep? Like, is everything too complex? So we've tried to, some of the work we've done with Carey Price, for example, being at the goalie camps that we used to be at with Eli Wilson schools. Carey would come out for one day and work with the kids, 2 sessions, an off-ice training. And we were recording and mic'd up for all of them. And we've gone back to those. Some of the tips are literally him just giving like a 45-second tip on why you should do a certain thing, why you hold your stick here when it's on the post, why it's important to not drift once you get to a spot. Like so many little tidbits and tips that seem so simple, but we got a really good reminder during the Stanley Cup final when I watched him play all the way up to the Cup final, and I'm watching the stick positions the same. And these little 30-second clips, sometimes you chase the big 10-minute article or 10-minute video, but these little 30-second clips of Carey talking to 8-year-olds,
yeah,
and then you see him applying the same thing in the Stanley Cup final, and you're like, man, this stuff's important. So we've gone back through those archives and dug those back out, and things that we maybe thought weren't worthy of an article before, we're like, oh my gosh, this is the stuff we need to be sharing. Because we've had a lot of parents say, hey, like, what about stuff for my kids? Not everything has to be NHL caliber. So we're trying to find that balance, and I think it'll be a work in progress. We'll keep digging, keep trying to find more of that type of content, as well as the other stuff.
Yeah. Well, hey, if there's one thing I'd recommend, I'd say as much Carey Price as possible. Because I know when I did my episode with Jorg Achenbach from True, who's had a great relationship with Carey for a number of years, we were sort of having a bit of a laugh at what an effect Carey Price has on the goaltending equipment industry, and just on an effect with goalies and with kids and players and people. He's a magnet for attention, and it's very interesting to look at his process and the way he does things. There was a program I had watched. I think it was Peter Mansbridge was talking about an interview he did with him, and they basically just looked at a picture, and all he said was, "So what are you doing here?" And Carey went into a description of, "Oh, actually on this play," and it was like, they say the greats know every play, and he could even say, "Oh." And whoever the shooter was, you see how his hand is it's turned this way. Well, I know he's trying to get under the puck there. So I know he's going this side. He's going right. He's probably going high because he's more under it. And then it just, so, I mean, just to know that even just being popular, but also having that added where he communicates it. And then you guys obviously bring that to life with your content. And so it's always a win.
Reads.
The funny thing you say, the pro reads, that's where we have the NHL guys do sit down and do the content. And it's become largely a Zoom thing. And I think we're all tired of Zoom a little bit. The players are too, but that's a good format for us to do a video review. So that's been handy there. But Carey was the first guy we did it with. It was in person at one of those Eli Wilson goaltending days. And just the detail he picked out, the first play I ran in front of him, the hardest part of pro reads is a lot of times it's really easy to just find the highlight reel saves. But as most goalies will tell you, those aren't the ones they like the most, or it's a highlight reel because
they made something else happen that they shouldn't have, right?
I made a mistake a second ago, and
Yeah, like when Carter Hardy's like, man, are all these like big glove saves? Like, just give me one that hits me in the chest because that means I read things even better, right? So, but this is the detail that Carey picked out that first time, and as a guy who thought I'd learned a lot about the position, there were still nuances to what he was picking up. Not just, and Freddie Anderson was really good at this too when we did ours with him, but not just about what the shooter's doing and where his passing options are and what hand the passing options are and how that dictates how you play it, but how much what your defense is doing, what they're supposed to do, what you trust them to do in terms of how you play a certain shot or chance or play is all about all those factors.
Yeah.
And I think we went into pro reads with the idea being, I hate the phrase goalie school goalie. I don't think it's fair, but you can in the summers, get into a mode where it's all the same drills. The goalie knows where the puck ends at the end of it.
Yeah.
And you can get a little too structured.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't necessarily, you can become so coached that you don't gain an appreciation for really reading the game. And what we wanted to do was show goalies of all ages the details that the NHL guys are picking up and how they read the game. And as soon as we did that first video session with Carey, I was like, oh man, like this is gold. This is exactly what we hoped it would be. And now, like I said, I think we're almost 20 months in. It's been one a week. So like, I haven't actually checked like how many pro reads there are, but there must be well over 100 by now. And so, if you are a subscriber, and that's the beauty, if you subscribe annually, we don't close our archives. So subscribing annually means you can go through and watch those 5 or 6 saves we did with Carey Price, watch the ones we did with Carter Hart last summer, and then also see all the new ones that we're doing as we move through this summer, and hopefully some more with Carter and hopefully some more with Carey down the road.
Yeah, it's great that you've got those goalies, especially if they're available for the area or, the ones you see at the various camps.
I'm hoping once the season starts, we're actually allowed back in the room, because life would be a lot easier if, that's the beauty. These guys have been so receptive to it. I mean, Freddie Anderson, after a long practice day, me and him just basically pulled up 2 chairs on a folding table outside the Maple Leafs locker room at Rogers Arena in Vancouver, pulled up my laptop and sat there and watched video. So these guys are, especially when they know that it's, hey, listen, it helps in goal. That's what we do. But they know we're doing it in part to help other goalies, and so they're so generous with their time. It really is. And when you get to see Carey in that environment, like you said, like Carey builds brands, right? Like he carries, he has that presence. But what I love about it is, behind the scenes when the kids come up, because we do a segment on how he does his toe ties, and then the kids are like, "Can you do mine?" And he's tying toe ties 5 minutes before they hit the ice to help the kids, or, just when he's encouraging these, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, and the encouragement and the tips, like they matter. They apply to everyone. So getting behind the scenes like that has been pretty cool. Pretty blessed to have those opportunities. And I think that's what In Goal is all about, is taking our audience with us on those opportunities. David Hutchison, Hutch, as we were talking about before,
yep,
he's in Kelowna right now with his son at a camp, Net 360, on the ice with Mike Smith, Martin Jones, James Reimer. It's normally a much bigger camp. A pandemic means not everyone's willing to cross the border, but so in the next couple of weeks we'll have content from that. And NHL goalie coaches up there, Mike Rosati of the Vegas Golden Knights, Kim Dillabaugh from the Philadelphia Flyers, and hopefully those guys too this week will be willing to share some of what they're seeing in the drills. And again, the idea is we take our access and we bring you with us eventually in the replays and the videos and the articles, so that everyone else gets to go behind the scenes like we do and sort of share in that blessing and hopefully learn something from it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, I think as someone who tries to consume, some of your content, it comes through. I think wholeheartedly it comes through in that way, that you're part of the team, like you're in it with them, you're in it with your subscribers, you're in it with your readers. So And then you've got one more facet to it, which is now a podcast now that you've been doing. We're in the 130s, I think, in episodes, somewhere in and around there. And I mean, I what and I've been listening for a little while, and I think the things I really like is you have, it's like a 3-stage. You have your intro. It's you, Darren Millard, who's a great host, and then you and Hutch obviously there, and then you move on to your equipment segment, which you do with the hockey shop out where you are, which is great. I know me, being at Just Hockey, I can safely say that Hockey Shop BC is easily the second best hockey store in Canada. And you've got Cam there with you. And again, after me and probably 3 or 4 other guys, he's probably right up at the top of the next tier of goalie guys too. So kudos to you.
That's good. You got to
finding
pop a balloon. We've made him this huge present.
I'm going to say it right into the camera. Cam, I'm just kidding. I know you're great. And I'll hopefully see you sometime soon at the Source Hockey Show. And we'll have a bit of a laugh at me chirping you a little bit. So, but you guys do a great job on those.
You have to put a pin in that balloon every once in a while. I sometimes worry about that head fitting through the doors. It's already unnaturally oversized.
Right? Yeah, there you go. Well, I mean, he's been at it probably almost as long as me, I think. I'm just hitting 20 years.
Yeah, he's been there since we were introduced, and I got to say, it's obviously you have the ties to there. Because we're from the area. But Chad Purdy, who's there, when in our early days when we were going to the shows in Vegas and trying to meet people, he played such a huge role in sort of, introducing us to the Sonia DiBiase's of the world from CCM, who was also such a huge part of and has such a great backstory and history in the position with her work. And
oh yeah, she's the first lady of goalie equipment.
100%. Yeah. And so it's been a great relationship and it's gone full circle a couple of times, right? Like when you have Brad Thiessen, who just retires from a 12-year pro career, and now he's going to be a goalie coach with the Columbus Blue Jackets, and he's from this area, grew up in Aldergrove, and I never even thought about it when we had him on the podcast. Like it wasn't part of the thought process sort of going into it, but then we start talking about gear, and sure enough, like that's where he went back when they were in the old store. That's where he went to get his gear. So it's been cool. It's been a great ride, and I'm really not just grateful but proud to have them on board with us for the ride. Like you said, 130 episodes, and we have some fun down there, poking fun at Cam, making him dress up in some, so we make him play dress up every once in a while and act a fool, but he does a great job with his knowledge too. So it's been fun. The podcast has been fun. And there was some temptation, some pushes from people to take that and make that part of the subscription, make it something people had to pay for. But we've kept it free. Anybody who, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can access it. And I think that's been important because we're not just about making money. We're about building a community. Even the subscription product, nobody's getting rich off this. We're just trying to make it a sustainable business. That's what I meant about the old page turner, right? It was free and everybody loved it. And we get the odd feedback, like, why aren't you free now? And I always point back to that. I'm like, because when we were free, we couldn't keep it up.
Yeah.
Like it can't be a hobby.
Yeah.
Like
Eventually it's going to go away if you can't get something out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, we're not exorbitant in the world of goaltending. It's basically the cost of a skate sharpening to read it, a month at a time. So they've been a big part of sort of helping us keep that podcast side free through their sponsorship, and it's been great for us.
Yeah, it really is a great partnership, all jokes aside, and they do a fantastic job out there. I mean, it's the only place you're going to go really when you're out there, and I encounter people and especially for things like skates and that, I say, look, just get there, go see Cam, and just go put them on your feet, and then you'll know whether you're going to like them or not, or whatever. You
might even sign an autograph while you're there.
Yeah, there you go. Bring a photo. Yeah. Well, so we've had a pretty busy summer, if we can transition into some of our NHL favorite goalies and some of the talk that's been around. I know we're a little out from expansion draft, entry draft, and certainly the early part of free agency. But if we can look at it even just quickly, your impressions. Obviously, another one of our mutual friends, Jeff Merrick, who always says he cheers for chaos. So we didn't really get that with Carey Price not being picked by the Kraken. But otherwise, how did you see their goalie selections? And you can add Grubauer and maybe the trade back of Vanacek. How did you see that? How do you think that'll round out for them?
Well, I mean, I think we got chaos.
Well, yeah, we got a little.
Carey being exposed.
Yes.
I will say, maybe there was a little part of me that was hoping they might pick him. All the numbers in terms of the way Ron Francis ran the Carolina Hurricanes and the reliance on analytics and how if you look at the Hurricanes, they haven't valued goaltending very highly in terms of. I mean,
they've strangely undervalued it.
Yeah, what they spend on the position, and I mean they've had success as a franchise. So who am I to argue? But I think when you looked at that history and Ron Francis being a part of it, I think if you were expecting them to claim any more than 3 goaltenders and do anything other than load up on defensemen, that's what I expected. I was kind of hoping it would happen. Selfishly, having Carey, 2 hours down the road once the border opens would have been nice. I've also had conversations with him about how much he loves the Pacific Northwest and spends time there with his family and his wife being from Kennewick, and how much time the pandemic, that's where they spent most of their time, not in Kelowna at the off-season house. So, I thought that would have been a good move for him. And the other selfish part is we sort of called it 2 years out. When Seattle got the franchise, we're like, I wonder, I could see Carey being their Marc-Andre Fleury. So we would have looked sort of prescient if that had happened. So selfishly, I kind of wanted to be able to say yes. But I'm happy he stays in Montreal and continues to be the icon there. I know how much it means to him to win there. Beyond that, a little surprised at the Grubauer thing.
Yeah.
Just thought, again, it kind of went against the expectation was they wouldn't spend on goaltending, and then they didn't in the expansion draft, and then they did in free agency. And part of me looks at that and goes, you're spending 9.4 and you could have had Carey for 10.5 and okay.
Yeah.
But if you get Carey, you need another guy too, because, there's a games played limit there. I would have liked, I was really fascinated to see, Chris get a chance to run with the job there. And I think the reality, though, is we're heading into a 2-goalie world. We've been there for a while, frankly.
Yeah.
And this season in particular, man, I don't think people realize it. I don't think your average fan or even most of the observers, when I get asked about this, I got radio hits weekly in different markets, and I think this is going to be one of the hardest seasons in the history of the National Hockey League for goaltenders. We've got a condensed season.
Yep.
For the guys that went deep into the playoffs, a shortened off season. We've got an all-star game and an Olympics.
Yep.
At least I believe it will happen.
Seems like it.
And we just lost the taxi squad.
You don't got a third goalie.
That's right. There's
anymore.
no third goalie.
And there's no more going into a city and sticking around for 4 or 5 days to play 3 games.
Yeah.
That's gone.
Yeah, you don't get a couple of nights rest in the same city.
Yeah, and I watched how much practice time that afforded the goaltenders this year. Practice time that becomes almost impossible to get once we're into the old traveling schedule. It's going to be really hard for goalies to manage both their rest and their games, especially young goalies that are moving up levels or technically they need to work on things. That time is gone.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a really, really tough season. I think everybody's going to need 3 goalies. A lot of teams are going to need 4 to get through the year. And you're going to have a lot of goalies in either new situations or that are moving up a level where the learning curve and the chance to adjust just isn't going to be there. And I wonder if you see some of them struggle more than you might normally see because they never get to catch their breath. They don't get that extra 20 minutes with the goalie coach because if they're a starter, they're playing that night and they need to rest. or, even if they're not a starter, somebody's got to take all those shots in practice, which, as we know, for goalies often sucks. And you're traveling to the next city the next day. Like, I just think
it's going to be a really tough year on goaltenders.
It definitely could be from a wear and tear standpoint. I think you might see that where those teams that do have that sort of extra backup as their AHL goalie, like Washington has a Copley, and there's the teams that have like that type of flexibility, maybe even a Stalock and Edmonton type of thing where sure, he's never really established himself. He's had some good stretches, but he's a guy who you probably could rely on in a backup role. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there as well.
Yeah, no, I think that number 3 role is going to be really important, and I think like you can't have one guy, right? We saw it, like everybody forgets. Carey had an incredible playoff run, but they're not even there without Jake, right? Like you need 2 guys now, and that's where I'll hand you the Grubauer-Driedger combo. Part of me wanted to see Chris get that opportunity to be the guy as opposed to the next guy.
I was at least a little bit puzzled when they make the investment. And then they bring in another guy, and obviously it's like a 3.25 or 3.5. Like that's a lot for a backup, definitely. And then the 5.9-ish for Grubauer, I guess it is.
Yeah, 5.9 Gruby and 3.5 for Chris.
So that combined is not tons and tons and tons, but for a team we thought would be kind of cap conscious, that might be a little higher than some of us probably thought.
It was a strange spend to go out after all that.
Mm-hmm.
Build the team that I think everybody thought they would, and then go and spend that money on goaltending.
Yeah.
I'm not against it. Hey, spend money on goaltending all you want, but it caught a lot of people off guard.
Mm-hmm.
And count me in that group.
Yeah, exactly. So let's take a quick look. So we, for the first time in 9 or 10 years, we had 2 goalies taken in the first round of the draft, and we had several years in between where there were no goalies taken in the first round. I guess it becomes unless there's an undeniable talent, a Vasilevsky, a Carey Price, or what have you, teams really are going to shy away because of the 2-man system, and because you don't really know. You're rolling the dice a lot of times when you do draft a goalie. So you are going to, well, maybe if I take the guy we all think is 3rd or 4th best, maybe that's the guy that comes out. But you look like even Carter Hart was the first goalie taken his year. He was early-ish to middle 2nd round. And then you've got some other guys like that who fell in there somewhere too. I think Mackenzie Blackwood is another one who's now a starter, and he was, I think, in the 50s. So you've got that, like maybe it's just it's a weird occurrence.
Well, I think there was a resistance to taking them in the first round because there were a lot of misses for a long time. And I think a lot of the misses were based on evaluating results rather than evaluating the goaltender. There were a lot of you can't be a puck blocker anymore. Like you can't be a static blocker. But there was an entire era where goalies had a lot of success in junior and especially at the World Junior Championships by being well-structured positional goaltenders, playing behind really well-structured defensive teams.
Sure.
And they were drafted high, and then it didn't translate. And so I think, honestly, and I've had this, Jeff Glass we've had this conversation with Jeff on the In Goal Radio podcast, who's now transitioning to coaching himself with the Anaheim Ducks and the San Diego Gulls and their development position. I think that was more of an evaluation failure that led to some guys not making it, and then teams becoming resistant to taking goalies high as a result, when the reality is they screwed up the evaluation in the first place.
Right.
And I think that's the danger of judging goalies based on, results rather than, results in terms of wins and losses rather than, accounting for the defensive environment, whether that's, through proprietary analytics or whatever. But you need to, we're goalies. We know that the backdoor tap-in is not the same as the same side rebound from the same distance in the, one's dangerous and one ain't. Like one's not going in from that range because I'm in my spot. The one that goes across the back door, that's going in 9 times out of 10. So I think it was an evaluation failure that led to hesitancy to make mistakes. I think you're seeing that go the other way now, as we've had 3 straight drafts with goalies picked in the first round. Spencer Knight here in Vancouver, and I covered that draft. Yaroslav Askarov last year with Nashville, and now 2 this year. And I think part of that is these are incredible goaltenders, first and foremost. Teams are recognizing, like, who are the 2 guys in the Cup Finals this year? Vasilevsky and, like, sometimes you need that talent. They're recognizing the importance of building a continuous chain of goaltenders flowing through your system. I mean, Columbus has invested in that, or other teams. Florida's the example, and here's the irony. Florida's the example. They build out the goaltending excellence department with Roberto, in part in a reaction to the Bobrovsky signing. They want to basically build a system where they never are looking, or they don't have to go buy an unrestricted goalie from someone else, or like Columbus didn't even have to really worry about paying their own guy. They could afford to lose him because they built out this system that had Merzlikins, that had Korpisalo, that has Daniel Tarasov coming next. Like, they could have moved one of those 2 guys last summer and had somebody ready to go. Like, build that out, and teams are recognizing the importance of that, to have a steady stream of young goaltenders coming up that can do the job without having to overpay to fix a problem in the position. So that's part of it. And then the third thing is we've got goalies actually doing the evaluations now. Dedicated goalie scouts, goalie departments, an understanding and an ability to contextualize and explain when a guy is having success that's going to translate to the NHL, and when a guy is having success in a way that might be more about the team than about him, and what skills will work at the next level and what won't. And yeah, there's still a little bit of hit and miss, and there's still a little bit of late bloomer, and all those things are true. But I think if you were to actually go take a look at the numbers in terms of comparing them to position players and the number of position players that are drafted in comparison, the misses aren't that extreme. They just stand out more than when they're in the first round. And so as you have teams that aren't as worried about it, goaltenders that clearly are world class, and teams that are comfortable with their evaluation of those goaltenders, that's when we're going to have what we're having now, which is more and more guys willing to take that shot in the first round because they believe that could be our guy in 2. And the other thing is in 2 or 3 years, not in 6 or 7.
Yeah. So, that awesome evaluation. And I completely agree. I think it's the technique of finding the goalie that's probably was at fault. And the analytics, of course, was the thing that you brought up. And we are, obviously Corsi and Fenwick, they don't really apply to goalies, unfortunately. But there are more than a few underlying numbers. I'm starting to familiarize myself with them as much as I can. Have you got like a favorite 1 or 2 numbers that you like to focus on and when you're looking at a guy?
Well, I mean, I like to sort of see save percentage relative to expected.
Yeah.
As a sort of performance number, and then goals saved relative to expected is another one. Now the difference is I'm blessed to have access sort of under the hood at ClearSight Analytics, where they have proprietary metrics where their expected numbers, expected goals, expected saves, how likely, like measuring shot quality. That's what we're talking about. You're talking about measuring shot quality. So when they do that, they have factors that include traffic, 4 different types of screens, cross ice passes, versus just being location based or largely location based. Yet listen, and this becomes a public versus private debate. And like I said, like not everybody can see the numbers I can see. So I understand that the public gets frustrated by that. Understand that the public analytics people have questions about it because they don't get to peek under the hood and test it and see how valid it is. And it's what they call black box. So I get that. And the people that work with the public numbers are freaking brilliant. Okay. Like way smarter than I'll ever be, despite having had that little taste of, computer science and statistics back at UBC in those, the old days, breakthrough, Jerry Maguire. So they do brilliant things. I just think it's not even that the data is flawed, although some of it is. It's off NHL play-by-play, and I've charted enough games where, they can't even. I've done Stanley Cup final games for NHL.com where the public data on where a goal was scored from is like 20 feet from where it actually was. So I just think there's too much context missed there, and the data I have access to is manually tracked. It's not perfect because it's not instantaneous. Like companies like SportLogic, it's AI, artificial intelligence, real time, faster results, but not as much context. It misses some of those pieces. Doesn't measure screens and traffic. So at the end of the day, the data I have is I really like it. I trust it. I trust Stephen Valiquette and the group he's put together to put the thought into it. And I think it's one of the better, if not the best, ways to measure goalie success relative to environment. And to me, that's what we're trying to measure. You're trying to basically figure out who's got 10 of the ones that are, sitting right in front of them, and all the guy can do is pump it into his pads or his chest, and who's got 10 on the back door. Like out of 10 from that location, who's got one back door and who's got 8, right? Chances are the guy playing for the Oilers 4 years ago had the 8. Environment matters. If you've ever been a goaltender, it matters. Shot quality matters. It's a real thing. And even for the fact for years we had arguments that it didn't even matter. It was just that one used to drive me nuts, right? Like if you're a goalie, it matters. There's different chance types here. And I think ClearSight does a great job of measuring those chance types better than anyone else.
So you mean it's not just whatever goalie has the most wins is the best goalie in the league?
No, although
I don't want to wind you up. I don't want to wind you up.
Quite
on
often
it.
the general managers will decide the Vezina based on that. Although I got to give them credit. They got it right this year. I didn't fully expect them.
That was a great conversation that you guys had on that, and how even though you got the guy you wanted, you were still a little disappointed because of how some of the voting seemed a little bit fishy. But we'll let that go.
Listen, we'll go to Brian Burke, who I can't remember, it might have been to Jeff Merrick actually that he said it, that like,
why do GMs vote on the goalie award? They get that position, and he was saying we get that position wrong as much as anyone. And so, listen, it's hard to measure it, and analytics don't do a complete job. There are other factors that matter, right?
Yes.
Like,
for sure.
Playing behind a good defensive team is hard. You don't get shots. You don't feel the puck. Like, that's a mental challenge. So I'm not pretending it answers every question, but by God, I wish GMs would do a better job of asking a few more before they come up with their answer.
Yeah, you could ask a few guys, they'd probably tell you, boy, I'd like to just play behind a good defense just once,
Yeah. I don't know what that's like in beer league. If any of my guys are listening, fact check would help.
There is nothing better than finding a guy in beer league who's like, oh, I play D. And it's like, you do? Like voluntarily? Oh, you're my new best friend. I'm gonna name my kid after you.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I got a couple of guys on my team that are listed as defensemen. They're usually the guys below the other goal line when we're up one on a power play late in the game, and somehow we get a 2-on-0. So just because you're listed as a D in beer league doesn't mean you actually play defense.
Yeah, shorthanded breakaways. I'll never figure those ones out.
The shorthanded 2-on-0s late in the game, you're up by one, are the ones that I tend to get a little grumpy about.
Well, you know what you do for those? Push the net off.
Yeah, I should. That would be. Yeah.
I'll take a 1-on-1 penalty shot. No problem. Delay a game, 2 minutes left.
If I push, okay, so 2 things on that one.
One, you do that in beer league, and you might never get to turn around because the guy might snap and break carbon fiber over the back of your neck, or fire the puck at you while you've got your back faced. And 2, like, come on, Dana, that's the thing, man. Like, I want to make that 2-on-0 save, right? Like, I want to sit on the pass that is coming back the other way.
Because that's why we play.
Yeah,
it's the chance to be the guy.
Even better, just let them pass themselves right up to the top of the crease, and then they've got nowhere to go and nothing to do with it,
See, we're going to end up doing a beer league pro reads here before long.
That's exactly it. I got some stories. Let me tell you, Okay, so we just had it was a big day for goalies yesterday. Where this is probably going to come out next week, but we can talk about this. We had three big signings yesterday come through. Carter Hart, 3 times $3.979. I don't know why they couldn't fit $21,000 more into his contract to round him off a little. I don't know if
no,
that's...
that was by design. That was
Is that because of his number?
That 7-9 is because of his number, just like Connor Hellebuck tweaking his numbers to match. So 37. So yeah, that was by design.
Okay. Well, we'll let it go then. And then we look at Igor Shesterkin. He was one of the others who signed. So he goes 4 years, 5.6 and a bit with the Rangers. That's a big contract, especially just coming out of what was his, I guess you could call it his Russian entry level, because he's a little older than some guys. So I think he's up there. It's one of the biggest ever, I think, for a goalie.
Biggest second contract, biggest coming out of entry level ever.
High expectations, but I think high warranted expectations given what we've seen in a limited sample size. But I think everyone there is very confident in his ability, and him of course as well. Rightly so. He has been quite good, and just when you thought when they brought in Georgiev and he sort of took over for a little bit, and it's like, well, wait till you see the other guy we got, we're bringing this guy in too. So probably I would say well deserving. When you look at the number, I mean, it's almost what Grubauer got. It's what Jordan Binnington, who's a goalie with a cup, and say what you will about him since and lately or whatever, I think he's kind of been a little up and down, but right in that same range too for a goalie who I think is 2 years. I think he's a 93 and a 95. I think those two are Shesterkin. And but yeah, I mean, he certainly looks like he's ready to be a 5.6 million a year goalie. So
well, listen, like his 2 years in the National Hockey League, when I take a look at the adjusted numbers, we're talking about Clearside Analytics and adjusted save percentage. Among sort of like, if you sort of cap it at minimum of 200 chances a season, like anybody who's faced more than that over the past 2 years, like as a qualifier, Igor Shesterkin has the best adjusted save percentage in the league. So that is a pretty bad Rangers team. He makes them a lot better, not just the way he stops pucks. This is one of the fascinating ones about analytics to me is Henrik Lundqvist, right up into that final season, right up until they brought up Shesterkin and ran the 3 goalie thing and parked him on the bench, but right up until that point in January, Henrik had similarly incredible results behind a bad team. The difference was his expected save percentage behind the same team was significantly lower than Shesterkin's was. They were both outperforming it by a wide margin, but his was really lower. And this is where I say that analytics don't tell the whole story. Like, as much as I'm an analytics guy and I believe in my numbers, there's still added context needed. And I've seen this a few times in other cases. Tristan Jarry and Matt Murray 2 years ago. Massive differences playing behind the same team in terms of their expected results. The other one that jumps to mind, and maybe just because it fits the narrative I'm about to explain, and maybe that's on me to look deeper, but Peter Mrazek and Alex Nedeljkovic in Carolina. Peter had a way lower expected. Both of them outperformed it. Peter by a significant margin. And you're like, how do you guys have that much tougher an environment behind the same team? And I think the difference in a lot of cases, the guy who has it easier, it's because he does some things that make his life easier. Shesterkin, Nedeljkovic, Tristan Jarry, what do they all do really well? They handle the puck well.
Yeah.
And so they can get you out of your own end and back onto offense a lot more efficiently. So, yeah, Shesterkin's the package. And listen, Benoit Allaire is a talent evaluator. The guy who told me, in Henrik Lundqvist's first season that he was going to be great because of his ability to adapt quickly, like that was the quality. He compared him to Michael Jordan, guys that can make changes like that. I'll never forget that quote. Before anybody thought Henrik was going to be Henrik, Benny had it picked. And so if Benoit Allaire has seen enough of Igor Shesterkin to believe, and I'm assuming because of the weight he carries in that organization, and despite changes around him in terms of management and coaching staffs, I'm assuming Chris Drury, the new guy in, knows to value that opinion. So I'm assuming he's weighed in on this. If he's calling Shesterkin as being that guy, my bet is by the end of this contract, it's going to be a bargain. And the only question I think it's fair to ask at this point is about, a big part of the job is being available for selection. Like, durability counts and matters. And I don't worry about the sample size because he hasn't gotten a chance to play, not enough games. I think you saw it in Russia. Like, it's not there. There's a bigger sample size than what we have in the NHL. And so trust that he is great, but he's going to have to find a way to be great for more games in a season to justify that number. And that is, I think not fair as a criticism, but fair as a question in terms of, why he missed this much time. And I know some of it's like car accidents, for crying out loud, not his fault, but we're a couple years in here, and that's sort of the last remaining question in my mind on Igor Shesterkin. And hey, when you run through all those contracts and all that money, you know what I'm realizing? That Thatcher Demko deal here in Vancouver, 5x5, starting to look really good.
It's definitely not bad. It's definitely it sort of falls in line with what everything is. I mean, and that probably was a bit of a dramatic signing if I'm thinking of it, and I mean, he had been the heir apparent for so long. I think once he was able to establish himself, I don't think that there was any doubt that they would lock him up on a long-term deal and that he'd get the money, because they knew he was self-actualizing as an NHL goalie. He was becoming who they thought or knew that he could be. So that's that. You're right. It makes you look at that move and go, oh yeah, that makes more sense now. That wasn't as out of line as maybe we first thought it was. So we'll move the last of the three. So the other big one, and it's actually a small deal because it's 1 year, $2 million to Ilya Samsonov in Washington. It's a little bit of put up or shut up, or a little bit of betting on yourself, which I'm always a big fan of, especially if you're going to follow it up. If you're going to PK Subban and win a Norris Trophy while you sign a bridge deal, or if you're Jordan Binnington and you say
Connor Hellebuck was on a show me when he was his first Vezina finalist, translated that into the 36 sheet.
Yeah, there you go. So you've got those guys, and I love nothing more than seeing that level of competitor, and certainly when it works out for the player, it's just a great story, and you love to see it. You love to see a guy come through that. And I think the one thing is, if Ilya does come through and have a great year, he's going to still be an RFA next year. He's not looking to walk on this deal. If they'd have signed I think if they would have signed a 2-year, that may have carried him to UFA. So that would have been even a little more dangerous for the Caps. So this is almost a little bit of a cat and mouse for both of them. It's going to be, and then we'll see. I think though, if he becomes a, whatever you want to call it, a $5 million goalie, I don't think the Capitals are going to complain though. That's just the thing, right? Like you want the guy to prove you wrong, show me you're not a $2 million goalie,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the thing with him is it's kind of like Shesterkin, but for different reasons. And I know COVID was a weird year and there were some issues there, but playoffs the year before and the ATV, like being there and being able to play and eligible for selection is a big part of being a number one goaltender. And so for him, like, the skill has always been there. I think they just need to see it a little more often, a little more consistency, and they'll reward him for the work he's done. He's come a long way since he's come to North America. His game was rough when he first arrived here. Like, his skill level was undeniable, but his technical game was, there's no other word for it. Like, it was sloppy. It was loose.
It did not translate
he definitely wasn't a polished
league.
No, there's a lot of work to be done, but he's put it in, and credit to him. And this is a nice deal for them and him, I think, because you're right. If he shows that all that faith was well placed, they're both going to get rewarded. Them with the number one goaltender that they hoped and thought they had, him with a nice contract. In the short term, they've left themselves a little wiggle room with the cap. And I know Vanacek was really good last year, but there's this guy named Lundqvist that might just play, and that'll be fascinating to see.
Yeah, well, he would need a new contract anyway, so who knows what happens there. I know we all probably saw earlier, it was either today or yesterday, a picture of him doing his mysteriously one skate lace, one stretch lace. I don't know if one broke and he had to replace it with something on the fly. I can't imagine that's by design, but we all saw, looks like Henrik Lundqvist is at least going to put forth the effort and to step back on the ice and see what kind of results he can get if he really is going to be able to give it another go. And as you know, I've he's never been really one of my favorites, but certainly you can't.
This podcast is over.
You can't help but cheer for the guy. You want to see someone do well, obviously. I know. I saw her. I always joke with my running gag kind of is never trust a goalie whose name ends in kvist. But I may have been biased being a Toronto guy for that, so I'm not really sure.
So there you go. Apologies to Michael.
No, I'm a huge Lundqvist guy, and I got to admit, I got biases there. He was very good to us early in his career and has been very good to us, like the kind of guy that would answer emails during a season, in the off season. Like, just, he's so much bigger than life, especially in New York, like the king of New York, right? And playing guitar on late night shows and, hanging out with other superstars, right? Like, he is bigger than life. And yet at the root of it, when you do get the chance, and it's gotten harder and harder over the years to find those windows, but when you get the chance to just sit down and talk about the position, that passion for goaltending burns and there's a passion, a competitiveness that I've seen as well firsthand. I remember the Rangers coming in, second half of back-to-backs. Hank had played the night before, optional skate, like 6 or 7 skaters out there. And not only was he out there for that practice, but he was competing on every puck. And we used some of the clips that I got that day at Ingol just as like that fire that burns with him, but also the passion for the nuances of the position. Like, he was no surprise that he was the one to be the guinea pig, the first one in the Odins in that as we transitioned styles of pads, like, because he wanted that active rebound, because he understood that it bought him time to recover. Like, he's a no stone unturned guy, and I love everything about his approach, and that passion, and so you listen, you get to know these guys not on a deeply personal level, not pretending that we're buddies, but you get to see those glimpses firsthand, and you cheer for them. I don't cheer for teams as a reporter.
Yeah,
I cheer for good stories and good people. And I believe deep down that Henrik Lundqvist is not just a great goaltender, he's also a great person. And so I just want Roberto Luongo, I wanted to see them have that success. You build that relationship, and so you want to see them have that success.
Absolutely. Well put. And I agree totally, whether or not I've ever, like I said, been an on-ice fan of him. Certainly he gives you no reason to not be an off-ice fan of him, So I don't know what we haven't gone through that you may want to touch on. Is there something in the goaltending world that's keeping you up at night?
Keeping me up at night, other than the fact I'm not sure I'll be able to get up the first time I drop into the butterfly after 17 months. Nothing keeping me up at night. I'm fascinated to see what's next for the position. We've seen, and at the risk of having my goalie union card taken away, I mean, this is the one thing I say is, if I'm a GM, the one thing I would avoid when signing goaltenders is term. And I apologize to all the guys looking for contracts, but I think the game changes too fast. I've watched in these past couple of years what it takes to succeed as a goaltender change completely in the National Hockey League. I think Matt Murray's a great example, and he's making changes to his game now that I think will translate with time. They were so big that they weren't going to happen overnight in Ottawa. It was a full year process there. I also think it's a load of horse crap that they bought into that, knew it was going to take a year, gave the goalie coach that grace, and then fired him 3/4 of the way through the season. And oh, by the way, Matt came back after a month off with an injury and played really well down the stretch, and the goalie coach they fired was the one who skated him for the first 3 weeks of that month.
So
yeah,
bunch of horse crap
a weird
there,
situation there for sure.
Terrible situation, but I don't want to get too deep into it. But Matt Murray wins 2 cups playing a certain way behind a team that prevented certain types of chances and generated certain types of chances at the other end. Lateral. Everybody copycats. Now, the next year, the Capitals win a cup, eliminating laterals at one end and purposely allowing their goalie coach to dictate to an extent how they attacked using clear-sight analytics numbers.
Yeah.
Attacking laterally. So now the whole league's doing it. And all of a sudden, Matt Murray's team, because they're a 2-time cup champion, isn't able to retain the personnel that allowed them to prevent those chances. And now all of a sudden, it's a league where if you can't move, you can't play. And guess what? Matt was a little low and wide and locked in. Mobility wasn't, You know, he was great. He moved well from that position. But now, like most goalies, you got to be able to play sort of upright, narrow stance, quick on your feet as well. You have to beat these plays that are increasingly becoming dynamic and quick laterally. Like, Matt Murray didn't forget how to play goal.
No.
But the game changed away from his strengths, and now he's having to reinvent sort of how he plays the game to keep up. And that's why I say I avoid term, because the game changes so much, and what you need out of a goaltender is changing. So what I'm fascinated to see next, Dana, is what is next? Like, what's our next reverse VH? What's the next thing goaltenders? I mean, players have finally caught on after 20 years of bigger, stronger, faster in the offseason while goalies were working on skills. Players are now spending but more of their offseason learning deceptive releases, learning how to show one thing that they know will generate a certain reaction from a goaltender, watch for that reaction, and then deliver the puck in a different spot than that show, than they were showing. Like, so how do we keep up with that? How do we stay on the puck longer visually so we can react to that? We've already seen goaltenders trend towards that with new tracking techniques. That's what I love about the position. I don't know what's next, but I'm blessed to have enough relationships with goalies and coaches around the league that when it comes, I'll be able to pick their brains and ask how they're going to solve it. And I can't wait to see how that give and take, that cat and mouse that has existed forever, continues to play out at the National Hockey League level and then trickles down at every level below that. And maybe just maybe, instead of trickling down, much like equipment, we're going to start to see a push from below, where instead of trends being dictated in the NHL, from an equipment standpoint, this to me is the most fascinating thing. Mm-hmm. The biggest changes in the equipment industry of the past couple of years haven't necessarily been dictated by the National Hockey League. They've started at lower levels by companies willing to make bold changes, and they've worked their way up. I watched as guys like Roberto Luongo went to the annual CCM thing, and they would build him pads with his old specs, and he would ask, why don't I have that on the stuff that's going to retail? Why don't I have the active rebound? Why don't I have the new knee? And so we're seeing manufacturers like Bauer with starting with Odin, and we're seeing them develop new things that goalies use at other levels before the NHL, and NHLers start asking for it. And to me, that's the next. That's another next one that I'm fascinated to keep an eye on, because for the most part, guys in the NHL will stay with what they've known. Guys that are building their equipment that feels comfortable. The glove closes how it's always closed because the same guy's been doing the stitching for my entire career. I'm not changing. Marc-Andre Fleury, I want leather straps, right? Like, they'll stick with what's comfortable. But eventually, as that push goes up, like, we're starting to see companies innovate, and they dictate the changes that more and more NHLers go for, as opposed to young goalies just wanting to wear what the guy in the NHL has. The reality is, more and more, the guys in the NHL are wearing stuff that they're comfortable with, not necessarily the stuff that's pushing the envelope of performance all the time. And so I think that conversation is shifting as well. And again, I can't wait to see where it leads.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and you're completely correct. I know you likely talk to most of the same, or a lot of the same guys that I do, whether like when I spoke with Jorg from True, whether when I spoke with Spencer from Bauer, Chris from Brian's, and Kirk from Warrior, translating the retail pad into the pro pad, or taking the pros, and they just say, no, I want it simpler. I don't want anything. We don't need anything wild anymore. We want something that's functional and works with our style and that, and we don't need to go outlandish anymore. You've already refined the gear down to where it just works, and that's really what we need. So 100% there, I agree. Kevin Woodley, I think I'm gonna let you go. I think I've worn you out. You're probably on about the third coffee by now, by the looks of things. Thank you very much. Take a minute. I want you to let everybody know where they can find you in goal, whether it's the podcast, online for the mag. The floor is yours. And take a bow.
Let's don't bother following me. You're just gonna get pictures of me and my kids surfing this summer in Tofino. But definitely check out In Goal Mag, In Goal Media. InGoalMag.com is where you can get all the stuff we talked about in terms of what we offer through the subscription. And I should say, like, we're a little behind on gear reviews, pandemic and all, because one thing with our gear reviews that we really do try and strive to do is, it's not just me, it's not my opinion. We really get it out in the hands of testers, including pros that come back for the summer and want to try the newest stuff. We're just playing catch up now that rinks have opened here and we got enough guys getting feedback. So we're going to start to pump those out soon. And if you see them on our social media, whether it's In Goal Media or In Goal Mag on Twitter and Instagram, or on Facebook, In Goal Magazine, and you're like, oh yeah, but I don't subscribe, so I'm not going to click the button. Well, all of our gear reviews are unlocked. So that's one service that we provide for everyone. So look for more of those to come out. And yeah, that's just go search up In Goal Magazine. You'll find us on there in various formats. Podcast is wherever you listen to podcasts. It's called the In Goal Radio Podcast. And yeah, if you know, what do they say? Like, subscribe, leave a review, all those things. If you like it, like us, let us know. And we appreciate the time with you here today, Dana, helping us spread the word. And we appreciated everyone that tunes in to the free stuff, and definitely appreciate everyone who subscribes to the In Goal premium model.
Absolutely, and I can't say thanks to you enough for just the enthusiasm in which you agreed to come on. Obviously, I'm only at 8. I'm very new in this format. And to be able to bring someone on with your expertise, it was great. It's exactly what I figured it would be. This was a fantastic, fun conversation. It wasn't an interview. It was kind of two goalie guys having a chat, I think, for the most part. And it was
Johan Hedberg once told me, goalie geeks, and we should wear it proudly.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So thanks very much, Kevin, and hopefully we'll get to do this again sometime.
You know what? Hit me up anytime. Can't wait till you're at episode 132.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks again for tuning in. And a big thanks to Kevin for joining us today. We had a great chat, and I hope we get to do it again sometime. Please remember to like and subscribe, and you'll be notified when more content is available. We'll see you next time on God Hockey.